Mercedes-Benz just did something with the 2027 GLB that nobody saw coming, and I'm not talking about another facelift or a minor refresh. For the first time in this model's history, they've fundamentally rethought what a compact luxury SUV should be, and frankly, it's about time. If you've been frustrated with the compromises that come with vehicles in this segment, the lack of genuine three-row capability, or the feeling that you're paying premium prices for what amounts to an elevated hatchback, what Mercedes has done here deserves your attention. This isn't just evolution. This is a complete reimagining of their approach to the compact SUV market. Now, I've spent over 3 decades evaluating vehicles, and I can tell you that genuine paradigm shifts are rare. Most of what gets labeled as revolutionary is just clever marketing wrapped around incremental improvements. But the 2027 GLB represents something different. Mercedes has listened to the criticisms, studied how people actually use these vehicles, and made decisions that prioritize substance over style points. They've addressed the fundamental issues that made previous generations feel like they were trying to be too many things to too many people. And here's what's really intriguing. They've done it while maintaining a price point that actually makes sense in today's market. We're going to explore exactly what's changed, why it matters, and whether this vehicle finally delivers on the promise that the GLB nameplate has been making since its introduction. But I want to set proper expectations right from the start. This isn't about flashy technology or attention-grabbing styling. It's about engineering integrity and thoughtful design decisions that you'll appreciate more with every mile you drive. Let me start with the exterior, because this is where Mercedes made their first bold statement. The 2027 GLB has grown, and not just in the superficial way that manufacturers add a few millimeters here and there to claim progress. The wheelbase is now 120 millimeters longer than the outgoing model. That's nearly 5 inches, and in the world of compact SUVs, that's substantial. But here's where it gets interesting. They haven't just stretched the platform. They completely redesigned the proportions to look more purposeful, more SUV-like, and less like a tall wagon pretending to be something it's not. The front fascia maintains Mercedes' current design language, but it's been executed with more restraint than we've seen lately. The grille is larger, yes, but it's integrated in a way that looks appropriate for the vehicle's size. There's no trying to make this look like a scaled-down GLS. It has its own identity now. The LED headlights are standard across all trims, which is a detail worth noting because it signals Mercedes' commitment to making the base model genuinely desirable rather than a stripped-out placeholder that exists only to advertise a low starting price. The profile is where you really notice the transformation. That longer wheelbase translates to a more balanced stance, and Mercedes has finally given this vehicle the ground clearance it should have had from the beginning. We're looking at 210 millimeters of clearance in standard form, and that increases to 235 millimeters if you opt for the optional air suspension. For context, that puts it right in line with the X3 and actually exceeds what Audi offers with the Q5. This matters for those of you who actually use your SUVs for more than urban commuting. It matters for winter driving in Poland or Germany. It matters for unpaved roads in rural America. It matters because it demonstrates that Mercedes understands who's actually buying these vehicles. The paint quality deserves mention. Mercedes has introduced 3 new metallic finishes developed specifically for this model, and they've reformulated their entire paint process to improve durability. If you've owned a Mercedes in the past decade, you know that paint chips have been a concern, particularly on the hood and lower doors. They've addressed this with a new primer process and a thicker clear coat. It's the kind of detail that doesn't make headlines but absolutely affects long-term ownership satisfaction and resale value. Around the back, Mercedes has redesigned the tailgate to be lighter and easier to operate, and they've finally integrated the rear wiper in a way that doesn't look like an afterthought. The taillights use a new LED design that's distinctive enough to be recognizable, but not so aggressive that it'll look dated in 3 years. There's wisdom in restraint, and Mercedes seems to have rediscovered that with this generation. One element I particularly appreciate is the wheel design. The standard 18-inch wheels actually look proportionate to the vehicle, and they're shod with tires that prioritize ride quality over sporting pretense. The optional 19 and 20-inch wheels are available if you want them, but Mercedes isn't pushing you toward larger wheels that compromise comfort and increase replacement costs. That's a refreshing approach in an era where 21-inch wheels have become common on vehicles that have no business wearing them. Now let's talk about build quality, because this is where your experience as vehicle owners gives you the perspective to appreciate what's changed. Mercedes has moved production of all European market GLBs to their facility in Germany, and American market vehicles are now coming from a new dedicated line in their Alabama plant that's been specifically tooled for this model. That production consolidation means better quality control and more consistent build standards across markets. If you remember the variability in fit and finish between early GLBs, depending on where they were assembled, you'll understand why this matters. The panel gaps are tighter. The door closing sound is more substantial. The hood and tailgate fit with the precision we expect from German engineering. These aren't details you notice in the showroom, but they're details you notice every single day of ownership, and they're details that affect how a vehicle holds up over 10 or 15 years. Stepping inside the 2027 GLB, the first thing you notice is space, and I mean genuine usable space. That longer wheelbase translates directly to second-row legroom that's increased by 75 millimeters. For those of you thinking in inches, that's about 3 inches, and it's the difference between adequate and actually comfortable for adult passengers. The second row now slides and reclines, which wasn't available on previous models, and this flexibility makes a real difference in daily usability. But here's what really matters for many of you considering this vehicle. The third row is finally legitimate. Mercedes has engineered enough headroom and legroom that adults under 6 feet can actually sit back there for more than short trips. I'm not suggesting you want to cross continents in the third row, but for running errands around town, for picking up colleagues from the airport, for occasional use, it's now genuinely functional rather than theoretical. The ISO 5AX points are properly positioned. The climate vents actually direct air to the third row effectively, and there are proper cup holders and USB charging ports. Mercedes has treated the third row as a real seating position, not just a checkbox feature. The front seats have been completely redesigned with new frame structures and improved cushioning. If you're in the target demographic for this vehicle, you'll appreciate the additional lumbar support and the wider range of adjustment. The seats are comfortable for long drives. They provide adequate bolstering without being confining, and they're upholstered in materials that should wear well over time. The base cloth is actually quite nice, better than the leatherette that many competitors are using as standard equipment. The optional leather is Napa grade with proper thickness and grain, not the thin, over-embossed material that's become common in this price range. Mercedes has simplified the dashboard architecture in ways that improve both aesthetics and functionality. The portrait-oriented screen that dominated previous interiors is gone. In its place is a 12.3-inch landscape display that's angled toward the driver and positioned at a height that doesn't require you to look down significantly from the road. This is better ergonomics, plain and simple. The screen size is large enough to display information clearly, but it's not so overwhelming that it dominates the interior or creates glare issues in bright sunlight. The infotainment system runs Mercedes' latest MBUX software, but here's what's crucial. They've maintained physical controls for climate functions, volume, and drive mode selection. There are actual buttons and knobs that you can operate by feel without taking your eyes off the road. If you've been frustrated by the trend toward eliminating physical controls in favor of touch surfaces, you'll appreciate this decision. It demonstrates that Mercedes is listening to feedback from actual owners, rather than just chasing the latest design trends. The navigation system now includes more detailed topographical information, which is particularly useful for those of you in mountainous regions of Germany, Italy, or the American West. The voice recognition has improved substantially, and it actually understands natural speech patterns rather than requiring specific command structures. The wireless smartphone integration works reliably with both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and Mercedes has finally positioned the wireless charging pad in a location where your phone doesn't slide around during cornering. Storage space throughout the cabin has been thoughtfully designed. There are proper door pockets that can hold a water bottle without interfering with the window switches. The center console bin is deep enough for meaningful storage. The glove box is properly sized. These seem like small details, but they're the details that affect daily satisfaction with a vehicle. Mercedes has also included multiple USB-C ports throughout the cabin, recognizing that modern families need to keep multiple devices charged. The ambient lighting system offers 64 color options, which seems excessive, but you can also set it to a simple warm white that's pleasant without being distracting. The materials throughout the cabin feel substantial. The plastics have proper grain and texture. The trim pieces fit precisely without the squeaks or rattles that develop over time in poorly assembled interiors. The headliner is actual fabric rather than the cheap molded material some competitors use. Now visibility is something that matters increasingly as we get older, and Mercedes has genuinely improved the GLB in this regard. The A-pillars are thinner than before without compromising crash safety. The door mirrors are larger with better integrated blind spot detection. The rear window is bigger, providing a clearer view when reversing. The standard backup camera is high resolution with dynamic guidelines that actually help you judge distances accurately. The optional 360-degree camera system provides a clear overhead view that makes parking in tight European city centers or American suburban parking lots much easier. Under the hood is where Mercedes has made perhaps their most significant changes, and this is where we need to talk honestly about where the automotive industry is heading. The 2027 GLB launches with 3 powertrain options, each designed for specific markets and buyer priorities. Let me walk through them in detail because the choice you make here will fundamentally affect your ownership experience. The base engine for most markets is a new 2.0-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder producing 255 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. These are meaningful increases over the previous base engine, but more importantly, Mercedes has completely redesigned this power plant, with a focus on refinement and durability. The turbocharger spools more smoothly, reducing the lag that characterized earlier versions. The engine runs on regular unleaded fuel in markets where that's available, which reduces operating costs. The estimated fuel economy is 26 miles per gallon combined in American testing, which represents about a 15% improvement over the outgoing model. For European buyers, we're looking at approximately 9.0 liters per 100 kilometers, which is competitive with anything in this class. This engine is paired with a new 9-speed automatic transmission that's been specifically calibrated for this application. The shift quality is smooth, the programming is intelligent about selecting appropriate gears, and it doesn't hunt between ratios the way some 9-speeds do. Mercedes has also improved the transmission's behavior in stop-and-go traffic, reducing the lurching that some owners experienced with previous models. The transmission includes a proper manual mode with paddle shifters, and in manual mode, it actually holds the gear you select, rather than overriding your input. The all-wheel drive system, which is standard on all but the base trim in most markets, is Mercedes' 4MA TIC setup. It's a proper on-demand system that can send up to 50% of torque to the rear wheels when needed. For normal driving, it operates primarily in front-wheel drive to optimize fuel efficiency. The system reacts quickly enough that you don't notice the transitions, and it provides genuine capability in winter conditions or on unpaved surfaces. This isn't the ultimate off-road system, but it's entirely adequate for the situations GLB owners actually encounter. The second powertrain option is a plug-in hybrid that Mercedes is calling the GLB 300e. This combines a 2.0-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with an electric motor integrated into the transmission, producing a combined 308 horsepower. But the real story here is the battery capacity. Mercedes has fitted a 25.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which is substantially larger than what was available in previous plug-in Mercedes models. This provides an EPA-estimated electric range of 54 miles, or about 87 kilometers on the WLTP cycle used in Europe. For many of you, this electric range means you can complete your daily driving entirely on electric power, charging overnight at home, and using the gasoline engine only for longer trips. The plug-in hybrid also qualifies for various incentives depending on your market, which can significantly offset the premium over the conventional powertrain. In Germany, for instance, current regulations provide substantial tax advantages for plug-in hybrid company cars. In the United States, federal and state incentives can reduce the effective price by several $1,000s. The plug-in hybrid uses the same 9-speed transmission as the conventional model, and Mercedes has done impressive work integrating the electric motor so that transitions between electric and hybrid operation are nearly seamless. The battery placement underneath the cargo floor doesn't significantly compromise interior space or cargo capacity. You lose about 110 liters of cargo volume compared to the conventional model, but you still retain the third-row seating and the practical utility that makes the GLB appealing. The third powertrain, available initially in European markets with American availability to be confirmed, is the GLB 250, with a 2.0-liter turbocharged diesel producing 197 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Now, I know diesel has become controversial, particularly in the wake of various scandals, but for high-mileage drivers, especially in Europe, the efficiency benefits remain compelling. This engine achieves approximately 5.8 liters per 100 kilometers in combined driving, and it provides the kind of effortless torque that makes highway cruising particularly relaxed. Mercedes has fitted the latest selective catalytic reduction system and particulate filters, so emissions meet current Euro 6 standards with margin to spare. Regardless of which powertrain you choose, the driving experience reflects Mercedes' decision to prioritize comfort and refinement over sporting pretense. The suspension tuning is oriented toward absorbing road imperfections rather than maximizing cornering speeds. The steering provides adequate feedback without being overly heavy. The brake pedal feel is progressive and easy to modulate. This is a vehicle that's easy to drive smoothly, which is exactly what most buyers in this segment want. The ride quality deserves specific mention because this is an area where the GLB has historically struggled. The 2027 model addresses previous criticisms comprehensively. The standard suspension, with its revised geometry and new damper tuning, provides a notably more compliant ride than before. You still feel road surface changes, but the impacts are filtered and softened rather than transmitted harshly into the cabin. Over expansion joints, speed bumps, and deteriorating pavement, the GLB now behaves like a vehicle that costs considerably more than its price point suggests. The optional adaptive damping system, available on higher trims, provides selectable comfort in sport modes, but honestly, the difference between them is subtle. Even in comfort mode, the GLB doesn't wallow or float. In sport mode, it's slightly tauter, but not harsh. For most buyers, the standard suspension will be entirely satisfactory, and you can invest the money saved into other options that provide more tangible benefits. Noise isolation has improved across the board. Mercedes has added more sound-deadening material, improved door seals, and fitted acoustic glass for the windshield and front side windows. At highway speeds, wind noise is well controlled, and tire noise is reduced to levels that don't interfere with conversation. The engine, particularly the turbocharged 4-cylinder, is audible under hard acceleration, but at steady cruising speeds, it fades into the background. The diesel, as is typical, has a more distinctive acoustic signature, but it's not intrusive. The handling, while certainly competent, isn't what you'd call sporty. The GLB weighs approximately 1,850 kilograms depending on configuration, and that mass is apparent when you ask it to change direction quickly. But here's the thing. Most buyers aren't purchasing this vehicle to carve canyon roads. They want something that feels stable, predictable, and secure, and the GLB delivers exactly that. On winding roads, it maintains composure without drama. On the highway, it tracks straight and steady. In adverse weather, it inspires confidence. That's what matters for the intended use case. The towing capacity has increased to 2,000 kilograms, which is 4,400 pounds in American terms. That's enough for a decent-sized trailer, a small boat, or a caravan for weekend getaways. The trailer stability system is standard, and Mercedes offers a factory-fitted towing package that integrates properly with the vehicle's electrical systems rather than requiring aftermarket installation. For European buyers who regularly tow, this capability makes the GLB a genuinely practical choice. Now let's discuss the market positioning and value proposition, because this is where your experience as informed consumers becomes crucial in evaluating whether the GLB makes sense for your specific situation. Mercedes has adopted an interesting pricing strategy with the 2027 model. In Germany, the base GLB 200 starts at approximately 47,500 euros, which represents only a modest increase over the outgoing model despite all the improvements. In the United Kingdom, pricing begins around £43,000. In the United States, the base GLB 250 carries an MSRP of $48,900. These prices position the GLB competitively against the BMW X3, Audi Q5, and Volvo XC60, while undercutting the Lexus NX by a meaningful margin. But here's what's significant about Mercedes' pricing approach. The base model is genuinely well-equipped. It includes LED headlights, the MBUX infotainment system, wireless smartphone integration, A suite of driver assistance features, including adaptive cruise control and automatic emergency braking, dual-zone climate control, and that important improvement to second-row space. You're not buying a stripped-out vehicle that requires expensive option packages to become usable. Mercedes has learned from the criticism that their base models felt incomplete, and they've addressed it. The mid-range GLB 254 TIC, which will likely be the volume seller in many markets, includes all-wheel drive, the adaptive damping suspension, upgraded interior materials, power-adjustable front seats with memory, and the 360-degree camera system. In American specification, this model price is around $52,900. In Germany, the comparable specification runs about 51,800 euros. This represents strong value when you compare standard equipment levels to competitors. The plug-in hybrid GLB 304 TIC commands a premium of approximately 7,500 euros in Germany or $6,800 in the United States over the comparable conventional model. Before incentives, that's a substantial surcharge. However, when you factor in available tax credits, reduced fuel costs for drivers who can utilize the electric range regularly, and potential company car tax advantages in markets where those apply, the hybrid can actually represent better long-term value depending on your specific situation. The top-spec GLB, which Mercedes is calling the GLB 354 TIC, includes the more powerful version of the turbocharged four-cylinder, upgraded brakes, the full suite of driver assistance features, premium audio system, panoramic sunroof, and luxury interior appointments. This model approaches 60,000 euros in Germany or $58,000 in America, which starts to feel expensive for a compact SUV. At that price point, you're competing with larger vehicles or more prestigious badges, and the value proposition becomes less clear. For most buyers, the sweet spot appears to be the mid-range GLB 254 TIC, possibly with selective options like the premium interior package or the enhanced safety features. This configuration provides the core competencies of the GLB without pushing into price territory where alternative choices become more attractive. Maintenance costs and long-term reliability are considerations that matter increasingly as we accumulate experience with vehicle ownership. Mercedes has extended their warranty coverage for the 2027 model to 4 years or 50,000 miles in the United States, which matches the industry standard but doesn't exceed it. In European markets, the standard 2-year unlimited mileage warranty applies, with extended coverage available for purchase. Service intervals are set at 15,000 kilometers or 1 year, whichever comes first, which is reasonable for modern vehicles. Mercedes has simplified the service requirements compared to previous models, reducing the number of different fluid specifications and making routine maintenance more straightforward. They've also improved access to common service points like the oil filter and air filter, which reduces labor time and consequently labor costs. The plug-in hybrid requires battery conditioning services, but Mercedes includes these in their standard maintenance schedule for the first 4 years. Resale value projections suggest the GLB will hold its value reasonably well, particularly in European markets, where the Mercedes brand carries strong equity. 3-year residual values are estimated at approximately 55 to 58%, which is competitive within the segment. The plug-in hybrid may actually show stronger residuals in markets with aggressive electrification mandates, as used buyers seek vehicles that can access low-emission zones. So does the 2027 Mercedes-Benz GLB really change everything? That depends on what you mean by everything. It doesn't revolutionize the compact luxury SUV formula. It doesn't introduce radical new technologies. It doesn't rewrite the rules of what's possible in this segment. What it does, and this is arguably more important, is execute the fundamentals exceptionally well. Mercedes has identified what was wrong with previous GLB models and systematically addressed those issues. They've added meaningful space without bloating the exterior dimensions to the point where European city parking becomes problematic. They've improved refinement and ride quality to levels appropriate for the Mercedes badge.